Maybe to begin, you could both just introduce yourself and also ELSAM as an organization.
Okay. My name is Miftah Fadhli. I've been working with ELSAM since 2015 as a policy and human rights researcher. My research concerns on mostly about freedom of expression, transitional justice, and digital rights in general.
And my name is Lintang. I'm a human rights researcher in ELSAM, Institute for Policy Research and Advocacy. My focus is digital rights and including the freedom of expressions and also privacy and internet content governance. And ELSAM itself is one of the human rights organizations in Indonesia, based in Jakarta. We're established since 1993. And our focus mostly about doing the advocacy based on our research. And then we also do assessment to regulations in Indonesia based on human rights principles.
Could you talk a bit about kind of your work on reproductive rights as well as the landscape of reproductive rights in Indonesia?
Well, in general, reproductive health information has been given to the students in school, maybe in the past 5 years or 7 years. I didn't remember I was given such subjects when I was in high school in 2007. So it may be just recently integrated to some subjects like biology, religions, and extracurricular activities. And a few schools maybe have special subjects on reproductive health, but mostly schools will integrate the reproductive health topics as a part of chapters in a certain subjects like in biology or in religions. But there is some problems because the topics is quite limited because it only covers that is more acceptable culturally and religiously, like maybe reproductive organs, pregnancy process, and HIV, and other topics that is acceptable for within a society. But for the contraceptions, abortions, and dating violence is less provided by the school because the school think such topics do not fit with the students, because the school do not want to endorse the students to do like a free sex or something that encourage them to do like premarital sexual relationship. And regarding the contraceptions, well, if we come up with the regulations, there is government regulations number 61 in 2014 that regulates reproductive health, but it is concerning more for mother and for married persons, but it's mostly for a mother. So there is no chance for unmarried people to have a formal or a public services that is provided by the health facility, public health facility. So if you talk about contraceptions, maybe you can still find condom sold by stores. You can still find condom in some stores, online, offline. But some local regulations implement more stricter law to young people to access condom. Like in Surabaya, they have to show their ID to be able to access condom. But other contraception devices, you should visit the clinics that is provided by the state. But maybe some private clinics is still okay if you are unmarried. But if you are visiting like official health facilities or like hospitals or government clinic, the marital status is very essential part before you be able to access contraceptions other than condoms. It is contraceptions topic things and abortions. Regarding the abortions, well, it is fundamentally illegal to access abortion in Indonesia, except for two reasons. The first one is indication of medical emergencies, and the second one is you can obtain abortions if you are a victim of rape. And if you are a victim of rape, you can obtain the abortions for the pregnancy no more than 40 days, the exact days. So it is very quite difficult for the victims to access abortions and for unmarried women to obtain the abortion, because you cannot have pills taken with you in the house, because you have to visit the clinics and you have to meet the doctors. Maybe the doctors will provide you with the pills, but the pills can only be taken in the hospitals with the strict supervisions by the doctors. And yes, another abortions that is acceptable by the hospital or by the health facility is the abortion because of there is indications of medical emergencies that is shown by the doctors. And one more thing, that if you talk about the reproductive health in general, the reproductive health policy in Indonesia is aiming to, is connected to the family planning program in Indonesia. So if we discuss about the contraception, it should be discussing about the how we can develop a family, how to prepare the young people to marry, or to to prepare them to be a mature persons in the future.
I wanna add some more about the abortion. The existing law about the abortions right now is that for pregnancy caused by rape or medical emergencies is basically based on our interviews from several key persons. Those regulations almost it's not easy to be implemented, because the process itself so long and very tiring for especially for the victims of rape, because it requires many process and very tiring, and mainly it's very very have an impact to the victims' psychologist conditions. And still in the law of that mentions about abortions, the law said there is the law can prosecute individuals that obtain or provide abortions in jail or fine until 1 billion rupiah. And based on health law in Indonesia, it can be also sanctioned until 10 years. 10 years. And if we take a look to our criminal law, Indonesian criminal law, there are also sanctions until 15 years. So basically, abortions in Indonesia is illegal.
It has also never been clear where health facilities that is providing abortion services because government never announced those facilities for public, and if not all doctors can provide abortion because you have to be certified uh, by the government to be able to provide abortion. So that's why there is so many cases where illegal clinics or the providers of abortions is prosecuted by the police because they provide illegal abortions without certifications at all.
How is marriage proven? Is it tied to an ID that's shown when somebody is seeking contraception or access to abortion?
Yeah. So our Indonesian's ID is show your marriage status. So if you show the ID, that will be written your status and your religion and also your age and your address. So it's become one of the card that will show your private informations, and ID become one of the card that usually used by government to do verifications and something like that. So so because our ID shows the marriage status, so it is the problem. For example, the doctor can access several medical services.
I think your research talked about a few different posts that were put on different social media platforms, for example. Also, I was really interested in what you talked about in your report about the websites being blocked that offer information about different services. So if you could talk a bit about how different methods that people's access to reproductive healthcare is being limited.
Okay, yeah. First, we have to admit that there are several efforts have been made by Indonesian government in order to improve their communications or informations of on reproductive health, such as they do campaigning on social media platforms and produce some infographic. We found a series of infographic produced by BKKBN, or it's Indonesia's national agencies for population and family planning. That an infographic basically mention about the family planning, but their focus, unfortunately, is to govern a woman's body or a very lack of gender equality perspective. Like, for example, one of an infographic is tell about the characteristic of a woman should have before they're getting married, or the infographic that says about how to become a perfect housewife, how to become a perfect husband, and so on. So we consider most of their content is very it's a patriarchal point of view, even though we can also found about for example, how they promote the contraceptions on the contraception day, and for some informative contraceptions that mention about these contraceptions, it's not to prevent any infectious diseases or something like that. But in terms of the family planning, they their post is like a very lack of the gender equality perspective. And the second, the limitations to access also, because based on the law that my colleague have been mentioned, based on our existing law, it has a very big impact that the access of reproductive services, especially for teenager and non-married, and this and it has some effect. The unsafe abortion practices are abundant, and also about the abortion drugs to be treated without proper supervision, such as the inaccurate doses or expensive drugs can be found on several e-commerce or marketplace. So because of the limitation, because the existing law right now, it makes the access for the information itself very limited. And there is an issue also about the stigma from society, not only from the society, but also the medical staff also do judgmental questions. It's still a big challenge for Indonesia, especially again for young people and non-married person to access reproductive health information and services from medical staff. Like for example, during the medical consultations, some doctor will ask about the marriage status of the patients once the consultation is related to their reproduction organs. So yeah, the stigma and also the existing law and the patriarchy's point of view that presence in national body is become a challenge that limit a person's in Indonesia, a society in Indonesia to access reproductive health care.
Basically, policymaker in Indonesia does not represent a diverse aspect of society. They get information from their parents for generations and eventually sit in the government. And they mostly use social media and websites to endorse certain perspectives or regulations that is misleading. Maybe they do not do that intentionally, but the perspectives has been rooted in the society that they, it to like abortions or contraceptions is still difficult for civil society organizations to convince the government that you have to make yourself more open-minded in making regulations, because there is no representations in the government.
And one of the biggest problem as well that limit to access the reproductive informations is the policy about blocking and website by government. So based on existing law in Indonesia, one of the negative content that should be tackled is including pornography, and the definitions of pornography itself is very general and very vague, and it's have an impact to how the words like breast or vagina is blocked, because they think it's a part of the pornographic contents, even though it's some of the websites is one of the I'm sorry. It's like for example, the words like breastfeeding or vagina is considered as a pornographic content, even though those websites are provide information of reproductive health for women, for example. So the blocking and takedown policies in Indonesia, especially on the negative content, is problematic
I'm really interested in if you could talk more about what your report mentioned about women on web's experience of the website being taken down, or that page being taken down from the website. And then if you could talk about other words that maybe are trigger the website being blocked.
One of the experience in Indonesia is blocking content is woman on web. So one of the representative of women on web in Indonesia explained that their website had been blocked several times because their website kept posting an article about the medical abortions, which is even though their articles is based on the medical abortions articles that they post is based on refer to WHO procedures. So the blocking decisions is made by the ministry, and they so the woman on web receive some email. They get an email from Ministry of ICT, and that email basically say about that there's a notification that your website's been blocked because there's some articles or activities about the abortions, and then they also the email said about the normalizations process has been undertaken after we conducted a verifications or confirming the removal of negative contents posted in women on web. So basically they the representative of women on web should ask the government or the ministry administrator to do the verifications that they have to defend themselves that this is not this is not content in pornography. This is about the reproductive health informations, but they do have some dialogue with the government. Yeah,
because in the report, what I understood was that the website was blocked because it mentioned abortion, and the reason that was problematic was because abortion was illegal, and so that made me think that all websites that mention abortion or provide information about it would be blocked. Is that right?
Yeah, that's also the odd of or unclear about the blocking and takedown mechanism in Indonesia, because we don't have any specific policy about that. So basically, the owner of the website can ask, such as it's, I don't know, is it considered as a appeal or not? But the website owner can do a specific dialogue to the government, and then they can give their defense to that. Because right now we can access the woman on web from Indonesian's ISP, but in the, I forgot the years, a few years ago, they received this blocking message from the government.
There are some organizations that promotes religious perspectives on certain issues regarding the reproductive health. They do not call themselves as anti-reproductive health organizations, but they promote the religious perspectives on some issues. Like, for example, website thisisgender.com. It is developed by the organization that is affiliated to a similar organizations with Indonesia Tanpa, not Indonesia Tanpa Pacaran, with some organization that endorses, you know, religious perspectives of reproductive health. They do not agree that contraception education being given to the adolescents because it will endorse the young people to free sex. And there is also a Facebook fan page, and there is also Instagram account to be used to deploy informations that is misleading for public. And I want to add more regarding the community guideline. There is, that there in our interview, there is our key person that is campaigning about the abortion using hashtag abortions, and then the Instagram take the hashtag down because of the reports from the public. I don't know. I don't know who reported the posting, but I think it is related to the community guideline that is being used by some of groups in society that do not agree with the perspective that is being deployed by these non-for-profit organization, because they propose the abortion for people and they propose contraception for young people, for example, in Instagram. And I think we have to be clear about how the community guideline is being regulated in some countries, because some, in most cases, platform like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter will respond to the majority to to take down some contents in the internet. And also about the blocking and filtering policy. Well, the policy is actually formalized in 2014, but the application has been implemented since 2011 through the Trust Positive database. Trust Positive database was built for tackling the pornography content, but with the formulations of the regulations in 2014, the definitions of negative content is expanded, not only limited to the pornography content, but also to the every content that government considers as as the violations of the laws. And I think there is no clear mechanism on how they assess the content to be considered as negative. But from my readings of the regulations and some browsings in the articles in the internet, that at least the ministry uses two methods of filtering and blocking. The first one is manual blocking and filtering. They mostly use the, they will depend on individual report and in government institutions to be made to the governments if there is content on the internet that is considered negative, and then the ministry will assess the content, and if the ministry think that the content is negative, then the ministry will send a notification to ISP or to platform to take down the content. And the second method is just recently in 2018, the ministry has has used the crawling machine that is developed by the corporation called the Indonesian telecommunication industry. It is basically a crawling machine to make the process of filtering and blocking more, accelerating. But basically, the machine itself is aiming to develop the trust positive database that is used to as a reference for the ISP or the platform to take down the content in the internet. So it both blocking mechanisms with the trust positives and the machine itself are depending on the ministry request to the platform or ISPs. And the ISPs should obey the order from the minister because the minister will put sanctions to the ISP or the platform if they do not want to take down the content that is considered negative by the ministry.
Who tells the ministry that something is potentially negative? You mentioned manual filtering, but do also people report on certain things, or how does that work?
Yes, individual can submit a report, and a government institution can submit a report to the ministry if they think that there is a internet the negative content and in the internet. That is the first one, and the second one is the ministry use a crawling machines. So they have a team that operates with these crawling machines to identify the websites or DNIs to list some contents in the internet and put them in the trust positive database. And the database is used to make decisions to the ISP or platform to take down the content.